More than a specific place, Bimini is a state of mind. 48 nautical miles and 15 or so air minutes east of Miami, in the center of the Devil's Triangle, lies a 9.5 square mile group of sand and coral dots known as Bimini. Bimini is part of the Bahamas, a nation of 700 islands once governed by England. The island's inhabitants fish and have shops and deal with tourists. The prevailing attitudes are live and let live and always put off for mañana what you don't want to do today. Seaweeds, or outsiders, have drifted ashore here since Prohibition, looking for thrills or seeking new ways to make a fortune. The island is a little more touristy now, but the pace is essentially the same. It's so calm and peaceful here, you get the feeling that if the rest of the world ever blows itself up, folks on Bimini will just shake their heads and say, "We always knew the bastards were crazy." Ossie Brown owns several hotels on Bimini and plays congas and sings with the Calypsonians, a local band.
People come down and they're actually themselves when they're the real self when they're here in Bimini. You know, they do crazy and wonderful things. Magical island, your island home in the Bahamas, friendly, warm, hospitable. That's Bimini to me.
Captain Dan Kipnis, a charter fisherman out of Fort Lauderdale, has been coming to Bimini for over 35 years and is an enthusiastic advocate of the island lifestyle.
Once you come here, you gotta come back. It's different than any other place in the world. It's unique. It's its own little point in the middle of nowhere that stands alone like nothing else. You fall in love here, you love it, you hate it. It's beautiful, it's ugly all at the same time. It is the best. And it's unique in the world. There's not another place like this. So I used to carry guns here. I used to carry guns all the time. I had guns. I'm here without a gun. I feel comfortable. You know, those are the stories that you make your movies about. It isn't that way anymore today. It changed. It'll be that way again. It was that way during Prohibition. It was that way during the Revolutionary War and during the Civil War. And they ran guns out of here. They ran booze out of here. They ran dope out of here. All right? And it will be that way again, but right now it isn't. It's real mellow here. This time. When you come to a place where everybody's alone, they're sitting on their own boat here. This boat's 7 miles long and 150 yards wide. You're on your own boat in the middle of nowhere. You got to get tight. You got to get tight.
Bimini's earliest known inhabitants were the Arawak Indians. In 1513, the island was discovered by Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon. During the 17th and 18th centuries, pirates and privateers, including Sir Francis Drake, used Bimini as a base for operations. The next century saw a colony of wreckers and scavengers retrieving treasure and valuable cargo from reefed vessels. More recently, expatriate Americans, artists, rebels, and renegades, ranging from writer Ernest Hemingway, to ill-fated Democratic presidential candidate Gary Hart, to singer-songwriter Jimmy Buffett, to exiled Harlem Congressman Adam Clayton Powell, Jr. They've all become a part of the island's story. Powell spent the remainder of his life on Bimini after being expelled from Congress for gross misconduct.
We had national television coverage almost every day of the week for about a month at one time when he was here. Adam loved the island. Of course, he was in exile, and he enjoyed spending his time down here in Bimini where no one hassled him other than the outside press. Adam did a lot for Bimini as far as publicizing it. It probably wasn't a positive advertisement for himself, but he sure and certainly did put Bimini on the map.
When Powell died on April 4th, 1972, his ashes were scattered over the clear turquoise waters surrounding Bimini. Bimini's different aspects are as many and various as the fish in the Gulf Stream a mile offshore. Hemingway, Western writer Zane Grey, and Congressman Powell each has big game fished here, and many world record fish have been caught off its shores. Some explorers believe that the first remnants of the lost continent of Atlantis were discovered off the north end of Bimini in 1968, as predicted by the world-renowned psychic Edgar Cayce in 1932. Some of the best sites for snorkeling and skin diving in the world are located here.
I get the best jelly coconut. Want a bite?
Crazy man. But round 12 o'clock one night, one crazy man was walking under the full moon. And just as he get abreast the crossroad, the spirit walk out in front of him and say, "What is ya?" And the crazy man say, "Is."
For many, Bimini is synonymous with raising hell. Assorted booze, alien, and drug smugglers have spent time on Bimini. The names and locations of Bimini's many nightclubs may change, but the charged atmosphere remains the same. During the 20s and early 30s, Bimini was a haven for rum runners looking for a drop-off point with easy access to the States. When the Volstead Prohibition Law went into effect in 1919, vessels containing up to 1,500 cases of booze were anchored offshore North Bimini. The liquor was transported by dinghy to the beach, since there were few docks on the island at the time. At first, the cases were stacked up in outdoor piles as high as 20 feet. Then, starting in 1921, more warehouses were constructed where booze awaiting shipment to the States could be stored. The Sapona, a concrete-hulled ship weighing 6,000 tons, was one of 6 built during World War I. The ships were considered impractical as they were too heavy for their relatively small cargo capacity. So after the war, they were consigned to a naval graveyard. The Sapona was later bought by Carl Fisher, Miami Beach's millionaire land developer, for use as a private clubhouse. That plan, however, proved impractical. So Fisher sold her to a dredging company, which in turn sold her to Bruce Bethel, a notorious one-armed Bimini bootlegger. In 1926, the Sapona was towed to Bimini, where it ran aground off the Turtle Rocks. When all attempts to free her failed, Bethel decided to use her as a warehouse to store booze. Well, this proved unworkable, since rum runners felt dangerously exposed to the telescopes of any Coast Guard boats lurking offshore. Bethel then decided to transform the Sapona into a nightclub. The hurricane of September 17, 1926, however, put an end to Bethel's dream. It destroyed his liquor barges, his warehouses, and his home, and left him a penniless shell of a man. During the 60s and 70s, and much of the 80s, drugs played a major part in Bimini's economy. Recently, however, the construction of a Coast Guard station at Gun Cay, some 5 miles south, along with the joint efforts of the Bahamian and United States governments, have all but closed that chapter of Bimini's history. Through the years, pirates, natives, undercover and not-so-undercover cops, and tourists of the economy and big spending varieties have mingled together in a temporary truce surrounded by the neutral waters off Bimini. For Bimini is the land of the continuous party. The ring game is a popular island pastime. The player attempts to ring a metal hook with a steel circle attached by a string to the ceiling. Night and day, the party drums are beating somewhere, and one need only follow the directions given over the coconut telegraph to know where it is.
Once is not enough, even twice, you don't see all of me stops. I'm back for some conch, peas and rice and guava duff. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. I'm telling you, once is not enough. Even twice, you don't see all of me stops. Come back for some conch, peas and rice and guava duff. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. I know one old man thought he was losing his prime. He never come home to get his meals on time. One day his wife cooked him some conch and peas and rice. From that day he said that conch is very nice. I'm telling you, once is not enough. Even twice, you don't see all of me stops. Come back for some conch, peas and rice and guava duff. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. I'm telling you, once is not enough. Even twice, you don't see all of me stops. Come back for some conch, peas and rice and guava duff. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. Christopher Columbus in 1492, when he came out, but everything is true. Before he died, he said the Bahamas is the most. And every year he come back and visit as a ghost. I'm telling you, once is not enough. Even twice, you don't see all of me stops. Come back for some conch, peas and rice and guava duff. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. I'm telling you, once is not enough. Even twice, you don't see all of me stops. I'm back for some conch, peas and rice and guava duff. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. Christopher Columbus in 1492, when he came out, but everything is true. Before he died, he said the Bahamas is the most. And every year he come back and visit as a ghost. That's why I say once it's not enough. Even twice, You don't see all of me stops. Come back for some conch, peas and rice and guava duff. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. I'm telling you, once is not enough. Even twice, you don't see all of me stops. I'm back for some conch, peas and rice and guava duff. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough.
Yes, man, come on down to Bimini.
Once is not enough.
Yes, some Blue Island fishing.
When you visit the Bahamas, once
Boom
is
fishing,
not
wahoo
enough.
fishing, dolphin fishing.
When you visit the
Yes, man.
Bahamas, once is not enough.
You must come back down to
When
Bimini
you
in
visit the
the bush.
Bahamas, once is not enough.
Yes, indeed, that's where is that.
When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough. When you visit the Bahamas, once is not enough.
For some inexplicable reason, the highs are higher, the lows lower on the edges of the Gulf Stream. And it's a curious fact that people are reduced to their essences on Bimini. Perhaps it's the intimate atmosphere of this tiny island, or the fact that it's located in the center of the Devil's Triangle, or some combination of the two, whatever it is. Facades melt like ice at noon, and visitors, like the natives, revert to their natural, uninhibited selves. Gary Hart, for instance. Remember this famous photo of him and his shipmates? They're sharing the stage at a Bimini night spot known as the Complete Angler. Hart is standing on stage with a sickly grin on his face, gamely attempting to play the maracas. A born wallflower, miscast in the role of satyr. Then there was Ernest Hemingway. Between 1935 and 1937, Hemingway made several trips to Bimini aboard his big game fishing boat, the Pilar. In total, he spent 3 months on the island, fishing, drinking, and writing parts of To Have and Have Not and For Whom the Bell Tolls. Some of this material was written at the Complete Angler. The owner-proprietor was then Mrs. Helen Duncombe, a transplanted Londoner whose husband had been the commissioner of the island. Mrs. Duncombe disapproved of Hemingway's drinking and maintained a strict British schedule. Tea at 4, dinner at 8. Much to Ernest's chagrin, the front door was bolted at 10 sharp.
And they had a number of discussions. In fact, Ernest would come down and show her some of his works. And I believe it was To Have and Have Not. He showed her some notes from that, and she told him it was a bunch of trash.
On Bimini, Hemingway was known primarily as a sportsman and a carouser.
Ernest was a sportsman. He loved the challenge, no matter what that challenge was. If it was fishing, he loved to take the challenge of catching a big fish. He would stand up and strike a tuna, which was unheard of in the time that he was here in the 30s. He loved to box. If the weather was bad and the boats couldn't go out fishing, he would right away assemble some guys and put up the challenge to fight a couple of rounds, box a couple of rounds. You know, he's a world traveler and he did it all. He'd go to Africa and wherever it was. He just loved the sport and the challenge of going out there and trying to be the best at it.
Hemingway had a standing offer of $100 to any Biminite who could beat him in a boxing match. Several tried. None succeeded. Manny Roll, a local businessman and former boat captain, was Hemingway's chair boy and remembers Hemingway partying with the locals as well as visiting sportsmen.
And Hemingway used to drink in the front bar with the guests and go back with the native boys, and he drank Barbados rum. And once in a while, he used to get carried away. I have seen him so drunk where he's holding on, but he never lost his senses. And he have to be the trainer for boxing. And he always walk on his toes. And he trained Amy Butler how to be a boxer, Louis Butler, and whatnot. He was very active in that field. And I tell you, he raised hell. And it looked like he, at that time I was a small boy, but he always liked women around. If he see a woman, he would call them in. I think Mr. Hemingway is the greatest athlete in all time, especially in the marine, fishing, etc., hunting. As much as I know about him, I think he's a great guy.
Hemingway hated sharks. He would even go so far as to machine gun them off local docks.
And he have fish fry and all the guts and head he threw out on the beach, and we catch shark. As you know, he didn't never like shark. He catch shark, and we used to get shrubs from the tree and wood, pine, and light it with gasoline and diesel. And we used to catch a shark and throw him the hole to Radio Beach in Bimini and burn him up. He said, burn shark to hell, because shark was a desperate thing to his fishing, and so on, etc.
Natty Saunders, alias Piccolo Pete, knew Hemingway during the 30s and is a minor character in the Bimini section of Hemingway's posthumous novel, Islands in the Stream. Piccolo wrote a calypso song called Big Fat Slob in the Harbor, involving an incident which served as the basis for a crucial scene in that novel.
Mr. Knapp thought that he was wrong, and he called Papa Hemingway a big fat slob. So I wrote this song after all that happened. The song is like this. The big fat slob in Bimini, just the night we have fun. Yeah, the big fat slob in Bimini, just the night we have fun. Mr. Knapp called Mr. Hemingway a big fat slob. Papa Hemingway balled his fist and gave him a knob. The big fat slob in Bimini, just the night we have fun.
It was a dispute about the fish. Anytime shark caught a fish, it is what is mutilated and it is disqualified. You had to bring a fish in whole. And Mr. Knapp thought that he had some record. The dolphin that he caught long in that time. And Papa Hemingway told him that the fish was disqualified. It couldn't be weighed in for any record. And that's what the dispute was. And that's where it come about.
Piccolo's song, Uncle Edward, about a man who bought some rotten candy in Nassau, appears in Islands in the Stream.
Edward been to Nassau, and he brought some candy to sell. And I buy some, and PH buy some, and the candy lend us hell. Oh, Edward, name the man, buff, roughed up Uncle Edward. Your candy rotten. Now Uncle Edward brought this candy. He thought that the children, he was a fool. He thought the children would have bought him every morning when they passed him to school. Oh, Edward. Oh, Edward.
The house was built on the highest part of the narrow tongue of land between the harbor and the open sea. It had lasted through 2 hurricanes, and it was built solid as a ship. It was shaded by tall coconut palms that were bent by the trade wind, and on the ocean side you could walk out the door and down the bluff across the white sand and into the Gulf Stream. The water of the stream was usually a dark blue when you looked out at it when there was no wind. But when you walked out into it, there was just the green light of the water over that flowery white sand, and you could see the shadow of any big fish a long time before he could ever come close to the beach. In winter, when the northers blew and it was really cold, the house was warm and comfortable because it had the only fireplace on the island. It was a big, open fireplace, and Thomas Hudson burned driftwood in it. Sometimes he would put the lamp out and lie on the rug on the floor and watch the edges of color that the sea salt and the sand in the wood made in the flame as they burned. Atlantis is the legendary continent mentioned by Plato in his Republic. According to Plato, Atlantis was a highly advanced civilization which was destroyed by earthquakes and floods around 10,000 BC. Between 1923 and 1944, the famous American psychic and healer Edgar Cayce made numerous references to Atlantis while under hypnosis. In 1932, Cayce stated, "The position the continent of Atlantis occupied is between the Gulf of Mexico on the one hand and the Mediterranean on the other. Evidences of the lost civilization are to be found in the Pyrenees and Morocco, British Honduras, Yucatan, and America. There are some protruding portions that must, at one time or another, have been a portion of this great continent. The British West Indies, including the Bahamas, are a portion that may be seen in the present. If a geological survey would be made in some of these, notably in Bimini, these may be even yet determined." In June 1940, Cayce predicted that evidences of the Atlantic island of Poseida would rise again. Expected in 68 or 69, it would happen in the area of the Bahamas. In 1968, as Cayce had predicted, an unusual formation of stones was spotted by a low-flying aircraft, and Dr. J. Manson Valentine, curator of the Science Museum of Miami, was then taken there by a local fishing guide named Bonefish Sam. Valentine was assisted in his explorations by underwater explorer Dmitry Rebekov, who provided underwater photographic equipment for taking wide-angle photographs. Together, they took photos of what came to be known as the Bimini Wall. The Bimini Wall is a 1,500-foot-long structure of symmetrical stones, the largest of which measure 16 feet square. Valentine and Rebekov came to the conclusion that the structure is the work of ancient man, a dike, perhaps, or a docking facility for antediluvian vessels. Though covered with sand and silt, the stones are plainly visible and form an underwater U. 3 lines of stones resembling piers protrude some 75 feet from the base of the U. The blocks are limestone and have been submerged from 6 to 10,000 years. According to Rebekov, who has explored similar underwater sites in the Mediterranean and elsewhere, the Bimini Wall is evidence of a highly advanced seagoing civilization, which is almost identical in design to similar underwater sites in the Mediterranean. Ashley Saunders is an island teacher, poet, and herb doctor.
Some people call it a road, some people call it a wall. They call it a wall because a lot of people feel as if it was a wall originally built around the island, meaning Atlantis, of course, to protect it from the sea. And when Atlantis sunk, this wall crumbled, tipped over, and just fell flat. So they refer to it as a wall. The road runs over 1,000 feet almost, and then just disappears under the sand. So a lot of people think it's a road that is leading somewhere.
Dr. David Zink, archaeological director for the Bahamas Antiquities and author of The Stones of Atlantis and The Ancient Stones Speak, is convinced that the site is one of a complex of sacred sites to be found the world over. These include Machu Picchu in Peru, the massive statues on Easter Island, and Stonehenge in England.
It was called the fishing reef at first. And the natives were always astonished by the size of these big stones. You know, they couldn't find the answer to, whether they came from or where they originate from. So it was always known as a mysterious place as far as we are concerned, And it was. Some people felt that it was sacred. Some people felt as if you shouldn't go there or fool around these stones, that you should just leave them alone, that it was a sacred site.
Memory Ledge is located at what some consider to be the peak or high point of the lost continent of Atlantis. Thousands of years ago, when the ocean around the island was dry land, Bimini stood out like a peak above the sandy desert. According to native custom, if one lies face up at Memory Ledge, he will experience a series of mental flashes revealing his own and the island's past and future.
I'd like to think that the stones off the north end of North Bimini, which we consider to be Atlantis, is Atlantis. In the past few years, we've had a number of people to come over and do research on it. A number of things have been written about it. And of course, there's a lot of interest that is created around that slab of stones out there. There are a number of drawings and documentary and things have been done on it, and we hope that something positive comes out of it. It can hurt Bimini, you know, if we find something of that magnitude off our shores like that.
In one of Edgar Casey's Bimini sessions, he predicted that healing holes, freshwater springs with miraculous healing powers, would someday be discovered on the island. Well, Biminites have known of a freshwater spring with supposed healing powers called the Healing Hole for generations. But it wasn't until 1974 that Ernest Hemingway's younger brother, Lester, was taken to where it is located, among the mangroves on East Bimini.
We call it the Healing Hole. Some people call it the Healing Spring or the Lithium Wells. You know, I've heard other visitors, foreigners especially, refer to it as the Lithium Well, the Sulphur Spring, and all kind of other different names. But to the natives, it's a healing hole, and the reason it's called a healing hole is because it cures the body of various ailments, the chemical that's in this healing hole. Whatever you got, you know, it'll cure it, especially arthritis or rheumatism or even heart problems, you know, it's good for that too. And you feel 100% better once you come out. You feel like a new man, and it does something to you not only physically, but psychologically at the same time. So it heals you, you know, all around.
In 1989, a private aircraft flying low over East Bimini spotted a group of what appeared to be huge sand sculptures shaped like various fish, including one about 500 feet long shaped like a lemon shark. On closer examination, they turned out to be 10-foot-high sand mounds surrounded by a sand beach and kept in place for centuries by the surrounding mangrove forest. According to Saunders, 6 generations of Biminites have known about the sand sculptures before their recent discovery by the outside world. But how they knew remains a mystery, since the figures can only be identified from the air.
On the old maps of Bimini, on that East Bimini, those mounds, the shark mounds are indicated. They're there. It's not like they're just on these new modern day maps. They're even on there on the older maps, which means that the natives knew that they were there maybe 100 years ago or more.
One final anecdote concerning that concrete relic of the Prohibition era, the Sapona. During World War II, the Sapona was used for target practice by training planes out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. On the afternoon of December 5th, 1945, 5 Avenger airplanes left Lauderdale to fly a practice torpedo run over the Sapona. At 3:45, the control tower received an urgent message from flight leader Charles Taylor. Taylor claimed they couldn't see land. They couldn't be sure of any direction. Even the ocean didn't look as it should. The tower was baffled. Even if magnetic interference had caused the plane's compasses to malfunction, the pilot should still be able to see the sun on the western horizon. Radio contact grew steadily worse, restricting further communications to short sentences. At one point, the tower picked up one pilot speaking to another saying that all his instruments were going crazy. At 4 o'clock, the flight leader handed over control to another pilot. At 4:25, the new leader told the tower they were still uncertain as to where they were. At 6:27, a rescue mission was launched. A giant Martin Mariner flying boat with a crew of 13 took off toward the last reported position of the flight. 23 minutes later, the sky to the east was lit by a bright orange flash. None of the aircraft was ever seen again. They vanished as completely as hundreds of other boats and aircraft in what has since come to be known as the Devil's Triangle. Danger, mystery, beauty. The overwhelming beauty of the people and the place. Bimini, in the words of its most famous part-time resident, Ernest Hemingway, is a movable feast for the eyes. Biminites will stage a party or parade for almost any occasion. Weddings, funerals, and numerous holidays, including British ones like Guy Fawkes Day, Bahamian ones like Chuckanoo, and American ones like Thanksgiving. And this New Year's parade.
Bimini, yesterday is forgotten. Today takes care of itself. And tomorrow is a vague time for the future.
From Ernest Hemingway to Gary Hart, from prohibition to drug smuggling, from the lost continent of Atlantis to the Devil's Triangle. The tiny, earthy, mystical island of Bimini has served as a focal point in the twists and turns of human fate.
There ain't no place for having fun like Bimini.
Bimini,
There ain't no place under the sun like Bimini.
Bimini,
There ain't no place in this whole wide world like Bimini.
down in Bimini by the sea.
There ain't no place for big game fish like Bimini.
Bimini,
Marlin, tuna, wow, and dolphin in Bimini.
Bimini,
No place with more world record than Bimini,
down in Bimini by the sea.
I say
If you spend a day here, you wanna stay here, down in Bimini by the sea.
there ain't no place as magical as Bimini.
Bimini,
Upon search for the fountain of youth in Bimini,
Bimini,
the healing of the Bimini Road in Bimini.
down in Bimini by the sea.
There ain't no place for happy people like Bimini.
Bimini,
There ain't no place for friendly people like Bimini.
Bimini,
There ain't no place in this whole wide world like Bimini.
down in Bimini by the sea.
I say
If you spend a day here,
that's right.
you wanna stay here, down in Bimini by the sea.
There ain't no place for good diving like Bimini.
Bimini,
We have undersea adventures right here in Bimini.
Bimini,
The Victory Reef and the Tona Alley. Jump in and see.
down in Bimini by the sea.
There ain't no place for pretty girls like Bimini.
Bimini,
There ain't no place for pretty girls like Bimini.
Bimini,
There ain't no place in this whole wide world like Bimini.
down in Bimini by the sea.
I say
If you spend a day here,
that's right.
you wanna stay here, down in Bimini by the sea.
I say
If you spend a day here, you wanna stay here, down in Bimini by the sea.
I say
If you spend a day here,
that's right.
you wanna stay here, down in Bimini by the sea.